We begin this story at a moment of tension that feels deceptively small on the surface, but heavy with consequences underneath. We see Brad standing in Jason's path, not with physical force, but with something sharper and more surprising: resolve. The latest developments in General Hospital show Brad actively preventing Jason from getting close to Britt. And we can sense immediately that this is not just jealousy or casual concern. We recognize fear in Brad's actions, but it is not fear for himself. It is fear for someone he loves as a friend, possibly the only person he still feels truly connected to after everything he has lost and everything he has done. We understand that Brad believes Jason is dangerous, not just because of Jason's reputation, but because closeness to Jason has a history of pulling people into violence, secrets, and irreversible loss. From Brad's point of view, this is not interference. It is protection. As we follow Brad's reasoning, we realize that his fear is not irrational. Jason is a man who carries danger with him even when he is trying to live quietly. Brad has seen enough of Port Charles to know that people orbiting Jason rarely stay untouched. We sense that Brad is acting out of a belief that Britt deserves something safer, something calmer, something that does not involve bullets, enemies, or endless moral compromises. And yet, we also sense that Brad's intervention crosses a line. He does not simply warn Britt or express concern. He confronts Jason directly, and that choice changes everything. It suggests that Brad is no longer content to stay in the shadows or play the role of the frightened, apologetic man he once was. He is willing to stand up to someone everyone else fears, and that alone signals that something inside Brad has shifted. We anticipate that Britt will not remain silent for long. Britt is not a woman who allows others to make decisions for her, even when those decisions are made out of love. It is likely that she will demand answers, not only from Jason, but from Brad as well. We imagine her confronting Brad, her voice sharp but wounded, asking him why he believes he has the right to decide who she can or cannot trust. Britt understands danger better than most. She has lived with it, embraced it, and survived it. She may argue that Jason, despite his past, has shown her honesty and respect in ways few others have. Britt's explanation, when it comes, will probably be layered with frustration and disappointment. She may tell Brad that his attempt to protect her feels more like control, and that realization alone could crack the foundation of their friendship. At the same time, we believe Britt will also attempt to stop Brad from escalating the situation. She does not want violence. She does not want threats. She does not want to see Brad become someone darker than he already fears himself to be. We can imagine Britt stepping between Brad and Jason, figuratively and perhaps literally, insisting that Brad back down. She may tell him that threatening Jason is reckless, that puts Brad in danger, and that it will only make things worse. Britt's intervention, however well-intentioned, could have unintended consequences. By choosing Jason's safety over Brad's anger, she might unknowingly signal where her loyalties now lie. That choice could wound Brad more deeply than any rejection ever has. We start to see how this situation could strain Brad and Britt's friendship to a breaking point. Brad has always been emotionally fragile, carrying guilt, fear, and a desperate need to be valued. If Britt openly sides with Jason, even to prevent violence, Brad may interpret it as betrayal. He might feel replaced, discarded in favor of someone stronger, more dangerous, and more exciting. This emotional rupture could push Brad into a place where resentment begins to override affection. We know from history that Brad does not always handle emotional pain well. When cornered, he tends to make catastrophic choices. That pattern makes this moment especially dangerous. What unsettles us most is Brad's newfound courage. Threatening Jason is not something an ordinary person does lightly. Jason is feared for a reason, and Brad knows that. The fact that Brad still chooses to confront him suggests either desperation or transformation. We lean toward the latter. Brad's return to town has been marked by subtle changes, a firmer posture, sharper words, and an edge that did not exist before. We suspect that Brad may not be the same man who once acted out of panic and self-preservation. He may have learned to embrace risk. He may have learned how to weaponize fear instead of being consumed by it. This leads us to the unsettling speculation surrounding Brad's connection to Selena. Selena Wu is not a woman who leaves loose ends, and she is not someone who invests in people without a long-term plan. Brad is her only remaining nephew, and family, for Selena, is both a vulnerability and a resource. It is hypothetically possible that Selena sees Brad not as a liability, but as a successor. If that is true, then it becomes easier to imagine that Selena may have quietly prepared Brad for a future in her world. Training does not always look like combat drills or visible violence. It can take the form of lessons in patience, manipulation, and controlled cruelty. Brad may have learned how to wait, how to strike indirectly, and how to hide intent behind apparent weakness. If Selena truly intends for Brad to inherit her operations, then secrecy would be essential. Poor Charles watches Selena closely, and any overt grooming of a successor would draw attention. Training Brad in private, under the guise of family reconciliation, would be the smarter move. We find ourselves wondering whether Brad's apparent fearfulness is itself a mask, one he has perfected over time. It is possible that the Brad we see now is only showing fragments of who he has become. This possibility reframes every interaction he has, especially with Jason. When we return to the present conflict, we remember that Brad openly dislikes Jason. This dislike predates Britt's involvement and seems rooted in more than jealousy. Jason represents everything Brad resents: power, respect, and the ability to survive without apology. If our hypothesis holds, then Brad's animosity toward Jason could evolve into something far more dangerous. Without Britt as a moderating influence, Brad might feel free to act on impulses he has long suppressed. The end of his friendship with Britt could remove the last emotional restraint keeping him from crossing a line. We imagine a scenario where Brad begins to view Jason not just as a threat to Britt, but as an obstacle to his own sense of control. Seeing Britt and Jason grow closer, possibly even becoming a couple, could ignite Brad's bitterness. He may tell himself that Jason does not deserve her, that Jason will eventually destroy her, and that eliminating Jason would be an act of mercy. This kind of self-justification is especially dangerous because it allows violence to feel righteous. In Brad's mind, he might not see himself as a villain, but as someone doing what others are too afraid to do. If Brad truly is a trained assassin, even a reluctant or inexperienced one, then Jason could be in more danger than he realizes. Jason's worldview often leads him to underestimate those he perceives as weaker. He does not target people like Brad, and he might dismiss Brad's threats as emotional outbursts rather than genuine warnings. That miscalculation could prove costly. Brad's strength would not come from physical dominance, but from unpredictability. He knows the hospital, He knows routines. He knows how to blend into the background. Those are the qualities that make someone dangerous in a world where everyone expects threats to come from obvious places. We consider how Brad might act if he chose to attack Jason. It would likely not be a direct confrontation. Brad would wait for the right moment, possibly when Jason is distracted or emotionally compromised. He might exploit Jason's protective instincts, using Britt or someone else as leverage, even unintentionally. The idea that Brad could orchestrate an attack without revealing himself immediately adds another layer of tension. Jason might not even realize who is behind it until it's too late. And by then, the damage could already be done. Britt's role in this potential fallout cannot be ignored. If she ends her friendship with Brad to protect Jason, the emotional consequences could ripple outward. Brad might feel abandoned not only by Britt, but by the version of himself he used to be. That loss could harden him. Britt, on the other hand, would likely carry guilt, wondering whether she pushed Brad toward darkness by choosing Jason. She may question whether her actions indirectly enabled something terrible. This internal conflict could become a defining struggle for her, especially if Brad's actions escalate beyond threats. As we reach the end of this analysis, we remind ourselves that all of this remains speculation. We hope that these developments lead to growth rather than tragedy. We hope that Brad's confrontation with Jason is a sign of personal strength rather than impending violence. We hope that Britt can find a way to hold on to both her past and her future without losing herself in the process. However, General Hospital has never been a place where hope guarantees safety. If even part of what we have considered comes to pass, then the consequences could be severe, possibly irreversible. In the end, we recognize that time is the only true judge. These theories are our attempt to understand the emotional and narrative currents shaping the story right now. Whether Brad is simply a frightened friend or a dangerous figure in the making remains to be seen. For now, all we and the fans can do is watch, wait, and brace ourselves for whatever truths the official storyline of General Hospital chooses to reveal next.